Okay, I'm here with Federico Jorge, who's the founder of Stack Against. How are you doing today, Federico?
All good. Thank you for inviting me.
Good to have you. So let's talk about Saas comparison pages. Your company obviously specializes in creating these pages for Saas companies. Why are comparison pages helpful for Saas companies?
That's a great question. And yes, everything we do is related to comparison pages and comparative advertising. And I would say they're valuable because clients, buyers find them valuable, right? And the reason for that is that, especially with tech and SaaS, the space is getting more and more crowded every day, right? The barrier to launching a new SaaS product is getting lower and lower. So all of these competitors are popping in like every single day, and every space has tons of competitors. You have thousands of CRMs, thousands of project management tools, thousands of time tracking tools, like anything that you can think of. You probably have a bunch of competitors, right? And especially in B2B, there's a lot of anxiety around making the right decision on which product is gonna solve your problem the best, right? So when people are searching for solutions for their problems, they wanna make the best decision possible. They wanna get that right. And when they see so many competitors, so many options, that kind of like creates anxiety, and they want to get the fastest answer and the clearest answer to the question, how are you different from them? How is your brand? How is HubSpot different from Salesforce, or whatever example you can think of, right? Because they want to answer that with as much clarity as possible. I have this particular problem. How are you going to solve it that they don't do? Or what kind of features you have that they don't have? And just, again, trying to pick the right option for them, ideally the first time that they have to choose, because they don't want to be migrating, they don't want to be switching to a different alternative down the line. Nobody has time to really spend like switching from product, migrating my database from here to there. And again, especially in B2B, when you're thinking about thousands of contacts or data points or whatever, moving all of that from place to place takes time. Retraining people on how to use tools takes time. So they want to get it right the first time. So they spend a lot of time researching that. And that's where comparison pages shine, which is trying to answer that question with as much clarity as possible.
Okay, great. And then, I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, I've come across some companies that have put a lot of thought into their comparison pages. I've also come across some that they're just doing it because they think, okay, we need a comparison page, and they just kind of use a template or something like that. They don't necessarily think about it that much. So what makes the difference, in your opinion, between a kind of mediocre comparison page that's not very well thought out and a really good one?
Yeah. One of the things you said is probably the key. They just create a template, change the headline, or they don't even change the headline. They just swap the name of each competitor on that template, and they just publish that and call it a day. And the problem with that is people, buyers, they understand when they're doing the research, right? They get to know a little bit about each competitor, and they start to understand the minor and the bigger differences too between you and them, and between each alternative in the space. And when they see that your comparison pages, they all look the same, or that the message doesn't really resonate with what they understand about your competitors at that point, they just close the page, doesn't connect with them, and then you're done. Because once they close the page, that basically means you didn't make it to their shortlist, right? When they're going through this decision stage, they want to get down to 2, 3 different products that they feel are going to do a great job at solving their problems. And then at that point, maybe they get a demo with each alternative, or maybe they get a free trial if there is one, right? So the goal is getting to that short list. And if they feel like your comparison pages are not really detailed enough and knowledgeable enough to really convey the differences between you and them, they're just going to close the page. And one of the goals is helping buyers do the research for them, right? When you're going through this evaluation stage, you're looking at not just your comparison pages, you're looking at every competitor's website, you're looking at reviews online on sites like G2, Capterra, you're looking at product reviews from different sources. For example, I don't know, let's say TechCrunch, right? Or whatever, like any site that reviews different tools. It could be a CRM specialized site that reviews different CRM tools, right? And they're going to be looking at all of that, and they're going to start getting a very strong idea of what each tool can do for them. And if they feel like what you're telling them on the page doesn't meet their level of research and doesn't meet their level of nuance that they want to get from you, then it's not going to resonate with them, and you've lost them. So basically, you can't just rely on the template. You got to do the research. You got to go deep in terms of understanding how you're different, and you have to tell a story for each one of these comparison pages, which is basically the opposite of a template. You can have like a structured idea that is similar for each comparison page, because some of the talking points are going to be similar, but the reality is that each company is different. And because of that, each product is going to be different. Each product comes from a different set of values or a different approach to solving a problem, right? So even though features are going to be similar, and this is where the market is heading to, right? Copying features it's the simplest part of competitive intelligence, right? Somebody launches a new sales feature, and then suddenly in a couple of weeks, a couple of months, every competitor has that feature as well, right? So that's not the problem. The biggest issue is understanding the story behind each product and how each product can solve a problem with a different approach. And we strongly believe that each product has a unique way to see that, and that's what you need to bring on the page.
Okay, great. And I mean, I think what you brought up there about the research is very important, and it's actually what I found very interesting about Stack Against when I looked you guys up, is that this research is a big part of your process. So how can SaaS companies use that research if they can go and have a look at what people are saying about their competitors and about saying about their own products? How can people use that research to inform how they create that story on their comparison page?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's kind of complex to answer, because like every company has its own like way to go about research. But I would say we always try to create a specific narrative for each comparison page that we create based on the combination of 3 main ideas, right? Your positioning should be a combination of something you're great at. So from the get-go, it needs to be something that is on brand and it's a strength of your product. It needs to be something your competitors can't match, ideally, or at least that they're not talking about, right? Because if you're going against, I don't know, whatever competitor, and they call themselves the fastest, let's say, hosting solution, and they're known for that, then maybe you want to avoid that battle, right? You want to pick a different battle. You don't want to talk about speed. You want to bring the conversation somewhere else. And then it needs to be something that customers care about. Because if you're not talking about something that customers care about, you're going to miss the mark entirely. And that's where research really becomes helpful. And what we do is we go straight to the source. We go to and see what customers are saying about each competitor, and we dissect what they're saying, trying to understand different benefits that they expect from these tools, different objections that they have about these tools, and different pain points that bring them to look for different solutions, right? And once we do that, we kind of like prioritize what they're saying about each competitor, right? And from there, we come up with the strengths and the weaknesses for each one of our competitors, and then we compare that with our strengths. And we combine all of that, and from that combination of these three ideas, something you're good at, something your customers care about, and something your competitors can match, that's how we come up with our like big idea for the comparison page.
That's great. I mean, and I like the way that system kind of gives people a way to prioritize what they're actually going to talk about on the page. Because the other thing is, it seems to me that some SaaS products are very sophisticated. Some of them might have hundreds of features. So it's like, how do you decide which ones to actually talk about on your comparison page?
Yeah.
Cool. So I mean, so if you're in a situation where you've got a lot to talk about, maybe your client has got loads of features that they want to discuss, but you're just trying to keep it to a reasonable length. How do you actually decide which features to talk about and which ones to leave out?
Yeah, that's tricky. And what we try to do is, again, we go back to the customer. We appreciate, and we do have discussions with our clients, obviously, at the beginning of our projects. We usually are talking to the founders or the CEOs or the lead marketers at the companies that we work with to try and capture their side of the story, right? And that's perfect. And obviously, we want to use that. But again, we always want to contrast that to what we get from people, what we hear from people, and what we read people are talking about. And there needs to be a match. You can't just do a blanket list of these are all our features, and this is also a common mistake of comparison pages. Like, just drop a comparison table, make it as big as you can, all the X's and the check marks. Hopefully you get all the check marks, right? But that doesn't really make sense, because again, features are great. And if you have a disruptive or innovative feature that really makes sense to highlight, then that's going to be on the page. But people need perspective before they even come down to comparing features. Because if let's say I'm kind of new to the space. Let's imagine I'm making my first decision on which CRM I'm going to be using for my company, right? Could be an option. If I just look at the features, I don't even get to understand the impact that all of those features are going to have on me. So let's say lead scoring, right? If I don't know too much about the space yet, how do I know that lead scoring is going to help me? Or how do I even know what lead scoring means before I actually understand how the product works, right? So before we get down to comparing features versus features, we need to provide the reader with an idea, a big idea that frames the whole content for the page, which is basically, it's our way to try and tell them, this is a way we think about your problem. And if they connect with that, then everything else that they read throughout the page is going to be supporting that idea. So you first need to make that more kind of like emotional connection, and then they can go and start like going through their must-haves and good to have lists of features and comparing you versus them. And as a final note, I would say you don't need to cram every single feature that you want to sell on your comparison page. Ideally, you group certain features around themes. Like, for example, you could talk about speed, or you could talk about accuracy, and then like discuss certain benefits that you get from using your tool around those topics. But then we do try to always have a section that basically explains in a nutshell stuff that you can do with us that you can't do with them, right? And then at that point, which comes after what I told you about first stating the problem and how we solve that problem, then at that point, we tell you what kind of features you're gonna get with us and not with them. And then the problem with that section, obviously, is trying to keep it updated, because again, products changes, even your own product could change, and your competitors are gonna be launching new features. So you wanna keep that updated, but there's a place for that on your comparison page. Just make sure that you don't just put everything in there. Make sure that you talk about your obvious wins and stuff, the kind of features, or even more, the kind of benefits that people expect to get out of using a tool like yours.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think that's very important to frame everything in terms of actually the problems that you're solving for people, rather than just listing features. You know, and obviously that's something that copywriters talk about. It's kind of copywriting 101, focus on the actual benefits and outcomes you're creating. Let's move away from copywriting though. How important is design in creating a really great comparison page? Because it seems to me that obviously the product itself is what differentiates you in a lot of ways, but maybe companies have a chance to kind of grab the visitor's attention a little bit by having a page that looks a bit different as well.
Yeah, you can actually play a little bit more with comparison pages, because what's great about these pages is that you can rely on the comparison, right? And helping that idea and making that comparison easier through your visuals, that's always fun to do, right? And what we like to do is, apart from the usual kind of like, if you think of comparison pages, you think of the comparison chart, right? Again, the X's and check marks. When we're talking about that, what we try to do is simplify how comparison charts look like. Because again, we don't want this huge infinite scrolling chart, because that people lose interest at some point, and they get like too overwhelmed with so many features when you start listing when you start listing all of them. So we try to create theme comparisons, right? So we're going to talk about pricing and how we're different against them in terms of pricing, and we're going to talk about speed again, for example, and then we can just group the specific features that that we have around speed, right? And we create smaller comparison charts to make sure that people are like it's easier for them to understand and digest the information. And then for the rest of the pages, what we try to do is, which is again one of the copywriting fundamentals, show, don't tell, right? And again, because of the nature of these pages and you can do comparisons, it's easier for you to be more visual around this. So, and this is one of the, another copywriting fundamental, which is show, don't tell. And because we can rely on comparisons, because of the nature of the pages, what we want to do is contrast their way versus our way. And we usually do that with illustrations. We can do that with photos too. But if we can show the actual product and actually in a visual way with maybe animations or even videos showing you how they do something or how they solve something or how a specific feature they have works versus what we can do for you, then that's even a better way to go about designing these pages.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I've seen some examples of your pages that look really cool.
Thanks.
Cool. So last question is going to be a slightly tricky one. Obviously, we know a lot of SaaS niches are, quite crowded. There's a lot of competitors, but obviously sometimes new markets open up. Let's say I'm launching a SaaS in a pretty new market and my competitors are pretty new as well. there's not a great deal online in terms of user reviews and things like that. Maybe there's a handful on some of those kind of typical review sites that you might use. So if in that situation I don't have that much to go on, what would you recommend I do in terms of trying to figure out how to position my company on these comparison pages?
Oh, that's a tough question. So you're talking about a new product in a kind of like newish space too, not a lot of competitors, and maybe not a lot of knowledge around the space from buyers as well.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I would say in that case, maybe don't do comparison pages, or maybe don't just do them the way that maybe we're talking about right now and the way that we do at Stack Against, which is the classic us versus them comparison page, and that's separate maybe from your homepage and other like product pages or service pages, right? Because in that case, I think comparison pages, classic comparison pages, work better for a little more like sophisticated spaces where there's more knowledge around what you do, what they do, and all of that. In that case, since you're bringing something new to the table, I think comparisons still work, but I would do that in a different way, and kind of like do it the way Slack did it when they launched, where I don't remember exactly the value prop they had, but they were like the email killer, right? They were the tool that was coming here to replace email, right? And what they're doing is basically a comparison, and they would anchor their value proposition on something that you already know, which is email, and say, we're email, but like this, or we're email, but without everything you hate about email, right? And that helps. It's kind of like a shortcut to people understanding and getting what you do. Because if you're actually in a new space, and if you really have an innovative product, your biggest problem is going to be educating people around how you solve this problem and why they should trust you, right?
Right.
And you have to go against the status quo. And a great way to do that is talking about the old world versus the new world, what they are doing versus what we believe and how we approach this problem, which again is the same fundamentals of the product versus product comparison that we've been discussing, but without really just relying on a comparison page, but putting that at the heart of your value proposition. And if somebody gets the idea, we are email, right? And that's pretty easy to understand. Like everybody knows what email looks like and how you work with email, but then you switch that, but without X or with XYZ, then it's going to be easier for people to pay attention and go, oh wow, I know what email is, and I have these problems and challenges that you're telling me about with email. I'm interested to learn more about how you solve these issues. So Slack did that. There's probably tons of examples around this idea. Now I can also remember Hey Email by Basecamp, and I remember when they were pre-launch, they had this very kind of like manifesto homepage where they told you about email is great, but all these companies ruined the way that you work with in your inbox, right? And they even called out like Gmail, Google, Yahoo, Apple. They basically mess up your privacy. They're reading through all of your emails. Everybody gets to spam your inbox. There's no way to prioritize how you work in your inbox, and all of these challenges. And they said, we are solving all of these issues with a new way to think about your inbox, right? So it was, again, that idea of this is the old way versus us, which is the new way. So I would say make it make it a comparison, maybe, but don't worry about the comparison pages. That comes next. Talk about that and make that the heart of your value proposition.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something important for copywriters and marketers in general to keep in mind is the old way of doing things is not necessarily another product. Sometimes it is just a completely different system for doing a particular task or solving a particular problem.
Yeah, exactly.
You said something else before that I thought was quite an important point. You mentioned actually some of the people who might be looking at your comparison page actually might be new to solving these problems, and we tend to assume that the SaaS shoppers are kind of jumping from another product, or that they know the market well, and they have some idea of the products, what the products are, and they're trying to get some deeper insights. But you're right in that some people will obviously be new to a particular job or new to a particular problem. So how much should you sculpt your page to new people versus people who are jumping from another product? Or how do you make sure a page kind of speaks to both people who are new to this problem and people who have already been using a similar product?
Yeah, that's a really smart question. And yes, kind of like to begin answering that, people that are looking at these comparison pages are basically coming from two different perspectives. Either they're making their first choice, so they're looking at all their alternatives, or they are switching from a different vendor, right? And probably very, very frustrated with something in particular about this other tool. And but in any case, even those that are making the first decision, what's great about these comparison pages is that people that are interested in reading through a comparison page chances are they're more educated than somebody landing on your homepage, or even way more than somebody landing on your blog reading a top of the funnel, middle of the funnel article, right? Because they're telling you, just by clicking through to your comparison page, tell me more about you versus them specifically. So that gives you an idea that they're in this research stage. They're actively considering you, and they're actively considering your competitors, right? And because of that, they're already in touch with your competitors' marketing. They might be they probably are well past the education stage. They know their problem. They know how many solutions are out there in the space. They just want to get to the final stage of why you or them, right? So again, even though they might be new to the space, they've been doing this research already. So you can cut to the chase more, and you can go straight to, this is what we know about our competitors, and hopefully when you state this is the problem with Salesforce or HubSpot or Pipedrive or whatever, it resonates with what they already have in mind and what they've already been researching, right? So let's say they've been looking at online reviews, and they see a lot of people complaining about, I don't know, Salesforce, it's super clunky to use, right? And they keep reading this. It's hard to use, hard to get started, so many pieces, blah, blah, blah. And then they go to your comparison page, and your big story is Salesforce, where the Salesforce alternative that it's easy to use. I'm just simplifying things here, right? And if you can connect to that, to the things that they've been reading on your comparison page, then that's what you want to do. And that's where you win a conversion, right? Could be a free trial, could be a demo, could be whatever. But you can cut to the chase faster because these are readers that are more educated than your usual homepage visitor.
Great. Yeah, and I think that really ties into just making sure you really understand what people are looking for and what problem you can solve that your comparison searchers are fed up with in that moment.
Yeah,
or looking
correct.
for in that moment.
Yep.
Great. All right. Well, that's really helpful, and I think these answers are going to be super helpful to anyone who's creating a comparison page. So thank you so much for your time. And where can people find you online?
Absolutely. Appreciate again inviting me. I always love talking about comparison pages and just competitive advertising in general. I think it's a great topic. And they can find us at stackagainst.com. Just reach out whenever. And I'm also on LinkedIn. If you can find my name in there, or Facebook. So anybody that wants to reach out and talk about comparison pages, I'm always down for that.
Awesome. Federico, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, John.